Hey guys, what if I told you that you could automatically collect Google reviews from your customers or on Autopilot, right? Which is exactly what I'm going to be showing, and I'm going to be building along as well, which is going to be built inside of n8n, which is a low-code automation platform, right? With little to no code required, right? So by the end of this video, you can build along and also have a automated Google review system. So here's what this automation does, right? Just a quick overview, right? Firstly, this webhook trigger, it all starts off with this webhook trigger that's connected to the Airtable, right? Which is where we keep our customer data, right? Don't worry, this is all demo data, right? Just a dummy data. So when you change this service completed into yes, it will automatically send over information, right? This webhook will be triggered, and we'll send over a email requesting for the client's feedback. So they'll get an email something like this, right? Or yeah, something like this, right? Obviously, you can have the better spacing and actually make the email nicer, right? Because it's just HTML and you can include some better formatting, right? So after they fill up this form, right, which will then trigger the second trigger, which is when it will then update the records inside of Airtable, right? So here, will then update based on their feedback, right? And their comments as well. Then depending on what the feedback was, right, whether or not they were happy or they are unhappy with your service, right? If they gave you a good review, right, they'll be invited to leave a Google review and also even invited to use their review as a testimonial in our website, right? If they gave us less than 5 stars, or they gave us less than 3 stars, it's not that great of a review, right? We'll still also give them this Google review link for them to still send it on Google, right? Publish it on Google. Most importantly, we'll also inform our team, right, an internal team, to follow up on them and see how we can actually improve our service, right? How we can improve their experience with us, right? And most importantly, if they ignore our initial email, we also have a follow-up sequence, right? Which is pretty simple, right? So all of this actually happens automatically, right? It happens behind the scenes with zero manual work, right? Because we're all just mapping the existing data from the Airtable, right? So before we start, we just need to make sure we have a n8n account, obviously, and also an Airtable account, right? So for the Airtable account, it's important that we can actually run a script, right? Which is under automations. Good. This is the one that I created. We need to have the option to run a script, which, if I'm not mistaken, you need to go for the cheapest option, right? You need to at least sign on for the cheapest option. So obviously, firstly, before we start with any automation, we'll need a simple database to track our customers, which in my case, I'm using Airtable, right? So we have their general details, right? The address, etc. What service did they sign with us for? If whether or not they've made the payment dates, whether or not we've completed the service, right? This will be completed. This will be edited on our end, right? So whether or not, if we put this, which is the thing that will trigger the automation. This is a service date, and this is just further fields that will be populated as the automation goes, right? Whether or not if we've sent the review request already, whether or not they have already replied the feedback form, right? Yeah. That being said, let's just head on to automations, right? So we just need to create a trigger is when a record matches a condition. So we'll be selecting the table, which is customers, which is this table that we're using. So customers, when service completed is ticked, right? When there's yes, then we'll run this automation. Then we'll just run this script. So I'll also include a template version of this script, where you then need to include all of these fields. You just need to populate these fields and also add a new input variable here, right? So you need to replace this webhook URL and also to replace all of these fields, right? So all of these fields are actually just the columns, right? Name, right? Address, email, all of this. So all of this, everything here, you need to manually type it down, right? Then after that, you need to add input variable, for example, name. It already exists, but then you need to select name, right? Select the name again, right? Just like that. So you need to complete all of this here as well. Create input variables. So that's about it. So then to test whether or not this actually works, you need to head over to this trigger, right? So you click and let it run, right? Sorry, let me just unpin this data. So now we're gonna listen for a test event. I'm gonna head back over to Airtable and we're gonna test the step, right? So firstly, we need to select a record to test with. I just used the record that they suggested, or you can choose your own record. So in this case, I'm gonna choose this one, green car. So I'm just gonna, after we've chosen this record, right? In this case, I'm gonna choose green car. And then on the next step, we're gonna test this action, right? Scroll all the way down, test step, right? When we test this action. So as this runs, it'll pass over to this webhook trigger, right? All the information from Airtable will be passed to this trigger. You can see that the information from earlier, right? The name, address, website, the number, all the way to the email has been passed over to this trigger, this node, right? So just like that, you're able to, with this script, which is what we need, we can pass over all of this information from Airtable into n8n, right? Which is where the other steps will happen next. So just move this down real quick, right? So how can you set up this webhook trigger, right? So firstly, you can head over here, press plus, webhooks, right? So we'll need a node, right, called webhook. Right? We will put it as get, and we'll have a path for it. So we need to copy this, and we need to paste it inside this script here, right? This script here. And we also need to have an input variable here. Here. Or we have the value here. Yeah, just like that, you can then test for whether or not it's running. So let me just shut this down. Right, copy this. And we're gonna paste it here. Right here. Oops. So now we can just test it again. Run it. Yeah, there we go. All of the data came through again. So that's what we want. Now we can just create the next step, which is to send a email, right, to the person. So you can just click here, Gmail. Right? We want to send a message over to them. Right? So who do we want to send it to? We want to send it to the person's email, obviously, right? So we can just drag and drop this email. Subject would be quick feedback request for the SEO service, right? SEO service from North, right? Your company, just something like that. So email type and the message, right? So you can have something simple, right? Let's just have a hi person's name, right? Now we can just drag and drop the name. Hi. Working with us. We have to quick feedback on the service we just completed, right? Something like that, something simple, and we'll include the n8n form later, right? Which is the start of the second trigger. So click this link to rate your experience less than 2 seconds, right? Just the text. Right? So you can just, so this would be this link would be the start of the next trigger form, right? The next workflow, right? So we need to create a new trigger, which is n8n form under trigger. There we go. So we need to create this review feedback form, right? So we need to add some form elements. For example, we need their name, right? Placeholder for them, Jason. Company name, ABC company, as well as we need their email especially, right? Email, abc@gmail.com, something like that. Then lastly, we need the ratings as well. Ratings. So this would be a drop down, right? So we have option 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right. 1 being very low, very bad. 5, very good. Quiet, and also a comment, right? Comments. This will not be required, so it will be something like this, right? This will be the form that they'll need to fill up, right? Something like that. So we need to copy this link, right? And we can paste it here. There. Actually, I can put in the production one. Right? You can also put in the production URL so that it will work. Whenever they click on the link, right? Instead of you having to listen for a test, right? If it's the test URL, you always need to click execute step before you can receive output from the form when it's filled. Right? So let's replace this link. So the only difference between the test URL and the production URL is that this one has a form-test. This one doesn't have, right, the URL. And to use the production URL, you need to have the workflow as active, right? You need to activate the workflow. So in the next step, we'll need to then update the Airtable records, right? So Airtable, need to update the record. So we need to select back, or we can always send an email to see how it looks like. Let's just execute this step. So see how it looks like in our email. Right. There we go, right. Hello name, the person's name. Thanks for below for quick feedback. Less than 30 seconds, right? And if we click on this, yeah, it's not settled yet. Production URL. Review, correct. How come on? Oh, it's not saved yet. Yeah. Right, there we go. This is the link that we'll be getting. So yeah, so the next step is to create and update the record, right? So we'll be getting back from this particular table, which is the customer table inside the demo DANET base, right? So the base would be demo. And the table will be customers, right? So we'll be mapping these fields manually. So we'll be matching the customer based on the email, right? Because two persons can have the same name and address, for example, but the email will usually be unique to each user. So let's just drag and drop the email. Yep. So all of this, we won't need to care of this. We just want to update that the review request has been sent, right? So that when your team looks through this table, they'll know that this has been sent, for example, right? Has been sent, right? All of this delete. Right? So when you run this, you can see that the review request has already been sent. So this is just the first step. So we need to have a wait step, right? So we can wait for maybe 3 days or 5 days before we actually follow up and see whether or not they have completed the feedback, right? Which is here, whether or not the feedback has been received. So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to put it as 3 seconds, right? As it's just testing, right? So now we need to check whether or not the record has been created. So we'll be getting the record, right? Getting the record from the same base as well, demo, from the same table as well, customers, and we'll be checking it based on the record ID that we've created on, right? Just to keep things the same. So right here, we can see that the feedback received is still a no, right? So we can create an if path, an if else statement, right? If no. So if feedback received is equal to no, right? If it's equal to yes, right, which is true, then you'll go in the top path. If it's false, it'll go to the bottom path, right? Which is, in this case, it's the false path right here. We then have a follow-up email. So email, send an email, right? So it's a follow-up email. So yeah, there's something simple, right? So just a quick reminder, we'd love to hear about your experience, right? Click here to rate us, which is the same review form, same n8n form as well. And we also have to add in this, right? To prevent us from being flagged as review gating, right? So if you'd like to leave a public review, you can also do so on Google here, right? This link. So let me just paste this on the previous one. The first message. There we go. So moving on, after this step, we can actually just duplicate everything from here onwards, right? So let's duplicate everything so that you'll wait every 3 days. After 3 days, you'll then check again whether or not it's updated. If it's not, you send another follow-up email. So you can actually, by theory, you can actually keep creating this to have an unending follow-up emails, right? But yeah. So that's just the end of the first trigger, right? So now we're going to move on to the second trigger, which is when the feedback has been filled, right? So in this case, let me just quickly fill up this form, right? So I'm just going to put it as JSON. So say, right, this doesn't matter because we'll be matching it based on the email, right? So in this case, we're going to be using this email. 5, great. More. Plus on progress. That's good. Right, something like that. So once the form is submitted, right, after they filled up this form from the email, you then start the next workflow, right? So in this case, the next step would be to update the Airtable, right? So Airtable. We need to search the record to see whether or not this person email is here first, right? So same as before, demo, to match the base and the table first, right? So we need to match whether or not this person's email, right? Whether or not the email field is equals to this email, right? Whether or not the email field is equal to this. So we just execute. Yeah, so we can see that this person matches green car wash, right? This person. So then we can move to the next step, which is to then update, right? Airtable. Let me just duplicate this. Yeah, so it's a lot easier. saves a lot more time as well. So in this case, because we already have this ID already, we're going to be matching it based on the ID to keep things, to make sure it matches completely, right? So this ID, just drag and drop. We're going to be matching based on the person's Airtable ID. So just delete all this. So in this case, we're just going to be updating that the feedback has been received, right? That they have already filled up the feedback form. This. See here, yes, I turn to yes. And additionally, we also, since we already received their feedback ratings and also their comments on our service, right? We can also update the Airtable at the same time, right? So same thing, just drag and drop the values, right? And drop. So that. Excuse that. You can see it. 5 stars and also their comments. So now, which is the next step, which is whether or not, to see whether or not they gave us more than 5 or 4 ratings, right? Let me just move this down. Right, so we can always add a if-else statement, right? If this is higher, right? If feedback rating is equals to 5, right? Is greater than 5 or is it lower than 5, right? So if is greater or equal than, let's just keep it at 4. Yeah. Alternately, you can also actually use a switch, right, to have more control over the if-else statement, right? It's somewhat the same thing, right? In this case, let me just do switch, because I have not seen many people use this in their examples, right? Switch, right? So this is just routing rules, right? So similarly, if feedback rating is more than, let's say 4. Right, so you can see that the information is passed to the next stage. So you can always add a different routing rule. So in this case, if this rating is less than or equals to 4, right? Let's say we want it if it's 4, if it's 3 and below, right? So execute the step, and you can see that it only goes on the top path, which is the right path, right? Oof, it's a bit laggy. So you can see that there's 2 different outputs now, right? So for output 0, which is the top path, right? You can also rename the output. So for example, review more than 5, right? More than 4, for example. More than 4, right? Less than 4, than 4. So the output is, you can see the output, right? You can even add more. For example, if you say, if the feedback is 5, if the feedback is 4, 3 to 1, so you have different workflows for each of these output, right? But in this case, we just keep it to more than 4 and less than 4, which is why I prefer this over the if-else statement, because if-else statement only gives you 2 different workflows, right? So yeah, let me just move this down a bit, right? So if it is more than 4, right, we're gonna send them a Google review link, right, which is to ask them to fill up the Google review link, and also to ask them if they're okay to participate as a testimonial, right, to use their review as a testimonial, right? Right. So to make sure this email automatically sends whether or not they pass through everything, we want to acknowledge that they actually did fill up this feedback form. So we're pulling all the data from the n8n form, the feedback form, straight away. Right. So this is just the text that I copy pasted from before, right? So, from the workflows that I've created before, right? Would you mind sharing this on Google, right? So we're gonna link the Google review link as well. So where can you find this Google review link? You can always just search the business profile, right? Google business profile, and out, right? View profile, right? You can see here there's a get more reviews. Let's just click it, copy the link that shows. Right? So copy this link and you'll be including this link in the emails, right? So here, this link. Something like that. And if it's less than 4, right, then we need to create an internal email, right, to remind our internal staff, right? So just email. So let me just duplicate this too, right? Let's put that here. So if it's less than 4, we create a acknowledgement email, right, to acknowledge that we have our limitations as well, and we have gaps to fill for our service to be better. Right? Right. So since the previous output was the top path, right, more than 5, right, the rating was more than 5, so that's why there's no data. So usually I like to actually just pull the input, right, input the previous data, just so that I can fill up these forms properly first, right, and fill up this map data properly first before we move on to the next step, right. Name. So we can just go back to on-form submission. Ratings. Right, thanks for the feedback. We noticed you gave us 5 stars, and we'd love to make this right. Our team will reach out soon, right? Something like that, to acknowledge that their review has been received. Right? And next, we need to create an internal email to notify our team. So something simple, right? So to your internal team's email, please follow up on this person. Right, please follow up on Jason. Right, he gave a feedback rating of, now we just drag and drop, of 5. Oh, shit. It's in the comments. Let's just clear this up. There we go. Right, so hi team, please follow up on Jason. He gave a feedback rating of 5, but in this internal email sense, it's when it's lower than 5, lower than 4, right? With comments, right? So now I'll just delete the path. So there we go. Right, so now let's just turn the automation on Airtable, and we can test our automation, right? So let's go to data, right? Okay, so I'll need to change this email into a unique email. So in this case, it's my own email, right? Right, that's for this one, right? So we can just head over to review requests, change it to sent, and we should, and this automation should run, right? Oh, sorry, I forgot to replace this with the actual production URL, right? So I did it here, and also I did it inside. My bad on that. Right, so right here, right, did it, and now we can do it again. So customer, no, change it to yes. And it should work now, should work. Yeah, see, so it's running now. We've also received the email from them. Right? Automation services from Northstack, right? So hi, with your quick feedback on the service we just completed. We also like to leave a public review. You can do so on Google. So the reason why it stopped here is because we did not get this record. So the reason why it actually errored here is because it pulled the email ID instead of the record ID, right? It should be pulling from this. Instead, it gotten the email ID. Yeah. So we can always change that later, but no worries, because mainly what we want working is this stage, right? This stage. All of this is just the follow-up sequences, right? So now we just follow up with the form, right? Nothing much. In fact, let me just put this as less than 3, right? I want to see the bottom path. So this form is submitted, and now it should trigger the next stage, right? The next execution, which is this one. I think. Yeah, so you can see the form has been submitted, and it should send out 2 emails, right? One is the acknowledgement email, and one is the internal email. And most importantly, it should also update this field, right? Yeah, the ratings and also the feedback comments. And let's see the email, right? So yeah, someone left a 4-star review. Please follow up on this guy's name. He gave a feedback of 3 with comments, nothing much. Right? Yeah. So this is just the acknowledgement email, right? To make this right, I think they'll reach out soon. Yeah. So, yep. Just back here, right? Debug in editor. Now we can just pull the actual record ID properly, right? So it's under here. ID. Right. Here we go. Yeah, should work perfectly already. Right. And now if it's already true, because it's already updated. It already updated the that the feedback form has been filled, right? And here, feedback form already has been received, so it goes up to the true path and it stops the workflow. And yeah, so yeah, that's it, right? This is just, let me just clear this up. So follow up, right? Right. Yep. So yeah, that's it. Right. You now have a fully automated Google review generation system, right? So just a quick recap on what we've built, right? So basically, we have a automatic feedback request, right? When the service is completed, when you actually change the field here, right? When you say that service is completed, right? We automatically send out this email to request for the feedback, and we also route the customers whether or not they are happy with our service, or if they are not happy with our service, where we then send them an acknowledgement email and also an internal email to update our staff to follow up on them. So all of this is actually trackable inside of Airtable, right? You can easily add more fields to update on whether or not they agreed to join this testimony, or whether or not, what is the next steps for your team, right? So it's easily connectable to Airtable. So this would easily work for any business, right? Especially service businesses, or e-commerce or marketing businesses, SaaS companies, right? And most importantly, this system is actually review gating compliant, right? Because we still allow customers to actually fill up the Google review form themselves, right? We have a Google review link here as well. So it's not just, we are not really filtering based on this feedback form only. So yeah, it's still in a way ethical, right? So if you found this helpful, right, give us a subscribe, comment down below, and just let us know if you would like to see any more automation tutorials that you would like to see, right? Yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, see you in the next one. Thank you.